It's our pleasure to welcome now the Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives. That would be none other than Mr. Jason White. Mr. Speaker, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, Gerard and Rhino. Good to be here and on a Thursday.
Exactly. So I know you're running around because even though you're not in session, you're still conducting lots of meetings engaged in business down there at the Capitol. And that's largely because right after the session, you created 4 different committees. You call them select committees, I think. Is that right?
That's right. Because they're not like our normal standing committees that are named per the rules and meet during session and that sort of thing. These are out of session special committees, usually with one particular topic that they're laser focused on.
And in this case, these 4 committees are focused on, as you indicate, 4 different categories: the public employees retirement system, education, school choice, etc., voting, elections, and then the capital city and just the central part of Mississippi here, what we can do to revitalize that. How are those meetings going? What do you got to report?
They're going good. I guess around the Cap, a lot of times we judge effectiveness and that sort of thing by I think I heard the guy on your show one time say you're getting warm or close to it when you start taking the anti-aircraft and the flak and that sort of thing. So we kind of know we're over the targets now because we're starting to get that feedback and not just in our education reform and freedom committee, but in those others as well. And you mentioned the Capital City one. That was actually one continued from last year because they had done so much work last year. It led to 5 bills becoming legislation. None of those bills in and of themselves are life-changing, but all together and taken, those are tiny bites at a big problem. And that group had done such good bipartisan work and bringing everybody in that has a stake in what we call our capital city and metro revitalization that we wanted them to continue their work. And so now, of course, one of their focuses with the new administration and new leadership in the mayor's office is really looking at, this water and sewer issue and infrastructure and where we go from here, where they go from here and how the state can partner with them, not necessarily with an open checkbook, but with open minds about what does that partnership look like. Whether anybody likes it or not, we are invested. Mm-hmm. I think we have 175 or so Capitol Police now on the streets that have made a huge difference, whether anybody wants to admit that publicly or not. They've made a huge difference. We know it because we interact with businesses and property owners and residents on a daily basis. We don't live in a bubble, our members as they're here in Jackson, and that we hear directly from those people the difference those changes have made, including the law enforcement, including the other bills that have passed and the immediate effects maybe they see of some of those. So that's been good for our members to see, hey, work hard, find the right policy, and you see that change. And some of it wasn't popular at the time, but now I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that most of the oxygen in the room is being consumed by the conversations around education freedom and education reform, whatever you want to call it these days, depending on if it's a good word or a bad word. But we're just either naive or crazy enough to say, we're going to talk about it. We're going to get all the cards out on the table. And if you're a no, why are you a no? Why do you have to be a no? If you're a yes, why are you a yes? And how do you think this looks for our state? So sometimes those conversations are good and fruitful, and sometimes they're very uncomfortable. We got our caucus, our House Republican caucus together last week for an entire day of door shut, hearing from folks both from D.C. and national experts in the issues surrounding early childhood education, education freedom. Now, those folks were from the Trump administration, so they've got an idea of what they think that looks like, even for us here in Mississippi. We also had the Speaker of the House from Tennessee, who has passed major education reforms, including universal school choice recently, just to walk through with my caucus the political battles and the pragmatic, both policy and political ramifications that come from that. It was interesting take because they have twice as many people as we do in Tennessee. They have about 1 million public school kids. We have a little less than 500,000, but other than the numbers being slightly different, the politics are fairly similar.
I would agree.
Different demographics. Anyway, just interesting to see how it played out there, and it was good for my people to hear how that played out in another very close, neighbor state.
I want to first say that I think the moves made a couple of years ago with respect to the Capitol complex has produced positive benefits. I know I just feel better when I go to the area and I see those black and white Capitol Police vehicles all over the place. That's a deterrent.
It's a deterrent in and of itself.
That's no doubt. Just the mere presence. We're watching that play out in Washington, D.C. with the president sending in National Guard troops, and now even the mayor, the Democrat mayor of Washington, says, yeah, this really does seem to be working. Imagine that. You got guys walking around with uniforms on that mean business, and the criminals tend to
think
scatter.
About it for a minute. Why would anybody be against that?
I can't imagine.
It's like you gotta really contort yourself into a pretzel to find a way to be against that.
Well, I was there in the gallery. I think I remember looking at you a couple of times when you had the mayor and his entourage. Remember that?
Staring down.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Just filled up the entire North Gallery there, just watching what was going on, and there was just so much fear mongering and just untruths that folks were even going to the podium and stating, and none of that was true.
None of it was true. But
so I think we're better off.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah.
It comes with the territory.
I get it. All right, so yesterday, I don't know if you were able to catch it, or if he shared with you, but Representative Rob Robertson, who chairs the education in the House, of course, was on and had a great conversation with him about everything education, from education choice to school district consolidation. Where do you see that going now? And I know you've brought in folks from the Trump administration. It seems like the momentum is building, that maybe some folks who were opposed are starting to change their views a bit on this.
Well, I think we are seeing that. And I've been encouraged by my House members' willingness to be open-minded. Like, that's what I've asked of them as we started down this road of considering it and talking about it, is the beauty or the ugliness of it is this. Nobody else in our political circles has been willing to even talk about it. And we have some people who are, maybe licking their finger and stick it in the air and seeing which way the wind's blowing politically, but nobody's really come out and said, you know what? This is the right thing to do. Let's figure out how to do it politically and get there. So I got to commend them for being willing to trust me enough as the leader of our chamber to say, we're willing to look at this and try to figure it out if we can. And hey, it doesn't come at great political risk. Now, I've tried to remind them that, the only people that have lost their seat over this issue in other states are people that voted against it. That's what you saw play out in Texas, a very similar red state like Mississippi.
Big time.
So while the adversaries and the status quo people are very loud, they're very smart, or at least they think they are. It's really a small, loud group. When you boil it down to parents and kids, who I have to remind everybody often, parents are also taxpayers. They're the ones paying whatever bill for whatever we decide to do. They're actually paying that. When you boil it down to that, why in the world would we not leave it up to the parents? Jansen Owen was making a great point the other day, talking about, he's one of our House members from south of here, Pearl River.
The author of the open enrollment bill last year.
That's correct. And he's been one of our loudest and best champions on this issue, and I commend him for that. But he was comparing it to, so some of the naysayers are like, well, parents they're not education experts. He's exactly right. Or people that say that are exactly right. But they're also not health experts. But when their child is sick, they try to find a doctor who can get them to the right doctor, who can get them the right treatments that they need. We don't entrust that to other people. We entrust that to the parents. Parents that care enough about their child's education, they're going to find that best environment if we would just allow them to do that. And in most cases, guess what? Newsflash, it is their local public school. Right. And most parents choose that. And if it is so great, why are we afraid of the parents making that choice?
And we should say before we go to break, and I know you're aware of this, your folks have researched this, the vast majority of people, parents and students, want to stay in their public school. the one they're assigned to.
Almost to a default rate. That's correct. You're right.
We got Speaker of the House Jason White in the Element Wealth studio. We've got Speaker of the House Jason White in the Element Wealth studio. So we were sharing a little bit of information about the momentum that seems to be building behind school choice. And one thing also we should point out is that, and I know you've talked to your members and others who will have an opportunity potentially to cast a vote on one or more measures concerning this. The President of the United States is a huge proponent of education freedom.
Gerard, he's not only a huge proponent, he is kind of put his money where his mouth is. He has not only sent his people, members of his cabinet, here to Mississippi, he invited members of the Mississippi Legislature, House and Senate, Republicans, to meetings at the White House. We went in July. Those were very productive, good meetings. I can't remember if you and I talked about that before, but the number one goal for him for Mississippi is seeing education freedom. As you know, he wants to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. He wants to return all power over K-12 education to the states. But part of that, he wants to take it that step further for us in that he wants the ultimate decision surrounding a child's education with those parents. And not with systems, but empowering families, which goes to the overall theme, you might say, of really the adopted Republican Party platform, not only on education, but just in general. These ideas about bringing common sense back to government and accountability from the standpoint of what he calls empowering American families. And I know he didn't write our new Republican Party platform. A large group of very smart folks, conservatives, did. But I would encourage folks to go and look at it, not just to the education piece, but to the entire. I dug into it looking at the education piece and seeing that universal school choice is an adopted pillar of both the state and national Republican Party. But he kind of takes that a step further, almost to the point of pressing the issue where he got very involved. I was talking about in the Texas legislature, seeing it pass there. He issued letters of endorsement to every member of the Texas legislature who voted for it, and he did the converse to those that didn't, and those folks are no longer in the Texas legislature.
Yeah.
So I'm saying he went that far with it. Now, we hadn't been threatened in that way, but my point is he wants to see this through, and I think, folks, if nothing else, kind of like the Mississippi Senate does the Mississippi House now, if nothing else, they take our word for it when we tell them where we are on something. I think folks are that way about Trump now. When he says he's going to do something, he's very engaged on this issue. So that's not to be taken lightly, but that probably has added to the flavor a little bit of this conversation. And for folks who are nervous because of politics back home, especially from their school officials, when the President of the United States calls or the Vice President calls, you're probably taking that call and you're probably, inclined to give more than just a passing ear to it.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, nobody wants to be. So
that has helped our momentum. I will, and hey, our governor has been supportive. He's been very supportive. He came and addressed our caucus a week or so ago on this issue. And I thought it was very helpful, and he committed to be part of this solution going forward.
Everybody wants to know, is a special session in our future on this issue? I know you can't speak for the governor, and he certainly has the power to do that.
Certainly I can't, and your listeners are so engaged in the process. They know he teased that in a social media post not too long ago.
Yeah,
I do think it probably fits better in a special session. It allows us to focus on that and this issue not get caught up in all the other politics that go on the Capitol in any given session.
Yeah,
and I do think it was interesting to note. When the Tennessee Speaker of the House was addressing our caucus, he talked specifically about they did it in a special session. They had tried it in a regular.
Okay.
And
I didn't realize
all the other politics of it. And so he mentioned this. He said it took a governor's support in his bully pulpit in Tennessee, and it took a special session to get it to remove all the other horse trading and politics out of it, where you gotta, There's no lukewarm. You're either for it or against it, and we're fixing to have a vote, and that's what it took in Tennessee. And I can see the advantages of that. And if that's where we get to, I think we would welcome that. Now, again, we're still a long ways even from a bill. We are having conversations. We hope to have something kind of that I can start showing to my people in the next month or so that hey, we good here, we not good here, where are we on this and that. There are issues in the school choice range, not only ESAs or choice or vouchers or whatever, depending on who you're talking to, is for it or against it, what they call it. We're called the privateers. I notice the lady's name I won't mention on the air. She always, when she writes her negative post about it, she always uses the word scheme. If you see, there are no schemes. There are no schemes. There are no. I also hear the big money and the profiteers. There are no profiteers. Charter schools, by definition, in Mississippi, are nonprofits.
They're public schools.
All of our private schools in the state are all nonprofits. They're
right.
private. They're private, certainly,
right.
But most of them have nonprofit status. Even now, all of them don't. But they're private and nonprofits in the way that I can promise you, I've served on those school boards before. They're barely, they're struggling to make ends meet.
Right.
They're not. There's no Cadillacs out there other than a few of our metro private schools that you see who do very well.
Man.
But we've got to keep the conversation. And I remind our caucus members about this. If you start with it's all about the child, and it is about a child. It is about a child's education. Now, certainly there are other factors in the equation, like school districts and your local elected officials and your school board and your teacher. Like all these other things are factors. I'm not forgetting that. But those are just factors. The deal is about the kid and the family. And if you start there and work the problem out from there, I think you get to a good place for Mississippi families when it comes to offering them some real choices in their child's education.
And Rob Robertson emphasized that point very, very effectively yesterday as well, that it's about the child, and we tend to overlook that's what this is about. We think about it from an adult perspective, honestly, and what we're trying to achieve. You've heard Mr. Speaker, you've heard all the various objections. What do you say to those who say, for example, well, gosh, they're going to flood our schools, we don't have enough capacity, and also they're going to bring down our grading, and that's going to affect our property values?
All right. That particular red herring is directed at the idea of open enrollment or public-to-public transfer.
Right.
Couple of glaring things right out of the gate. Number one, we have public-to-public transfer now. It goes on every day. I was speaking to a group, the Lee County Republican Women, Tuesday night this week. After I finished talking, opened it up for questions. The first question, a lady said, this sounds like what my granddaughter does, and she named the school district where she lives. She got a release from that school district. She got accepted at the Tupelo City School District. Her granddaughter goes to Tupelo and pays, I think, $1,000 a semester.
There's a tuition.
Yeah, there's a tuition.
For the local, to cover the local portion.
But so there's an issue right there where open enrollment was allowed and did work. And for some people, they'll say, we already have it. Schools can do it now. Yeah, but your home district has to release you.
It's pretty rare, though.
It's very rare.
Yeah.
It's either somebody.
I'm surprised that you found an incident, an example.
Well, what you tend to find is that's somebody that's politically connected or influential in the community in a way that they know who to call and have influential school board members here in both. And you got to have it in both places.
Yeah.
Not just one. You got to get released and get accepted.
That's right.
All right. What Jensen's Owens bill did that you mentioned earlier on open enrollment or portability,
yep.
public-to-public transfer, it just removed the handcuffs or the lock for the home district. It didn't force anything on the receiving district. They can still say no. They don't even have to articulate a reason. Now, they can, if they want on the front end, to say, we're not taking any outside district students because we're at capacity. Then say that.
Yeah.
Or you can say, we can take 10. I don't know where that got lost in translation, that this idea that a busload of 100 thug kids, mind you, are going to load up and all show up on the doorstep at one of our suburban area schools outside of Jackson.
Never happened anywhere it's been implemented either.
It's not going to happen. But let me say this.
Okay.
If there is a mom in Jackson Public Schools, if there's a single mom somewhere that wants something better for their kid, I don't know what that better is. Maybe it is a neighboring public school district. Maybe it's a private school district. I'm for empowering her to the point of parent engagement where that just might work for that kid. Who could be against that? Articulate a real reason to not be for that. It's tough for anybody to do.
I agree. Speaker of the House, Jason White, when we come back, want to dig into the issue of school district specifically consolidation. Not to be confused with school consolidation, school district consolidation. On the other side of the break, we're with the Speaker of the House, Jason White. Studio, we're chatting with Speaker of the House, Jason White. So one of the objections I hear, Mr. Speaker, is we need to address the bloat in the expense of operating many public school districts in the state. And perhaps that starts with some district consolidation. And heck, I talked to you last year during the session. You approached me in the hall. I don't think I'm saying anything out of school here. You said, Gerard, we're going to work on a serious look at consolidating districts. And I actually said, I think there are going to be some concerns about that, because you had talked earlier about let's just do one per county. Was kind of an idea.
I think that should be our goal.
Okay.
Now, I'm not so naive that I think that's going to happen.
Okay.
Especially overnight. I think that could be our goal. We're at 132 now. I think 100 is probably a reasonable goal if we could get to 100 school districts. Now, I understand. Immediately, you're going to have people say, "Well, that's all fine, but not for ours."
Not mine.
Here's why. And again, we're not talking about schools. I'm talking about school districts.
Correct. Not schools.
And it won't save $400 million. I'm not reporting that. But I think what it does is it pools resources and brain power throughout the state that I think even MDE, and I'm not their spokesman, and they don't want me to be. I'll let them articulate their position on this issue. But I think even they would agree on some level that there is a leadership crisis in education, period. Not just in our state, but everywhere. Folks are going into other fields that maybe used to chose the profession of education and administration and all that. And so when you got 132 school districts, guess what? You got 132 superintendents, and you got 132 everything else.
And the rest of the organization chart that cascades out from that. And there's a high fixed cost, whether you got one school or 100 schools.
That's
you got
right.
a high fixed cost
Right
to operate a district.
Right out of the chute, you got that. And so I do think it's not only worthy of the conversation, it's worthy. We wanted to task MDE with doing it and say, look, we're going to get the politicians out of it. All we're saying is that by 2033, we want to be at 100 school districts. And MDE, you go implement whatever policies you think will get there. And if you need legislation for it, we'll back you up and do that. And so that's kind of where the conversation, that's kind of where we've tried to go that route to maybe get some of the volatile politics of it, because there's no denying in most of our, especially our rural communities, the school district is the largest employer. It's just the most popular. It's got the history, and it kind of still holds some rural places together that have otherwise lost all their industry. The landscape has changed dramatically from an economic standpoint, and folks are moving away. But that school is still there, and that gives communities something to rally around. I'm not here to talk about – I'm just saying you could keep the school and just not have these multiple big school districts in addition and high number of those. You can still keep the school if the school makes sense. And I think that's part of the beauty of school choice. If you allow it, we'll find out where the great schools are, because people are drawn to those. It's just like a good movie or a good restaurant. The consumer,
word gets around.
Consumer will tell you, like, you don't have to, we don't have to have Barney and 4 other detectives to find out. They'll tell you with their pocketbook and their interest. And like you hear my preacher said last Sunday, let me see your cell phone, and I can decide what your 3 highest priorities are within about 5 minutes. And you know what? He's about right. He can look at your email, your photos, and your phone calls and conversations. We'll find out what's important to you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that way with education. If we leave it up to the parents, we'll find out. We'll find out real quick. And again, I think people will be able to look back a few years from now if we get some real school choice and say, you know what? Only less than 10% chose, so that means public schools are great. I agree. Most people prefer that. I'm simply saying for those that are trapped in some bad situations for their child, It may be great for every other child, but not for their child for whatever reason. Let's give them a choice. The sky will not fall. The world will not end. Our great schools will be fine. Our failing schools will have to up their game to keep their customers, if you will. And that's kind of the beauty of school choice.
And of course, the typical refrain, as you well know, from the public school opponents, I would say, to school choice is, well, they just need more money, right? It's always the response.
No. Well, first of all, we have given them more money. We have funded public school at historic levels to the point of this past session, the new student funding formula, the Inspire formula, was fully funded for its second year of existence. So it equals the number of times MAP was fully funded in its 27-year existence. Just in 2 years, we've equaled the number of fully funded times. Historic levels. You almost didn't see an article about, are they going to fully fund education? Because we did it, so they couldn't talk bad about us. Now, one of the Mississippi Today folks 2 months later wrote an article and said, oh, yeah, they fully funded education. It's almost like just don't look over here in the corner, because guess what? They actually put their money where their mouth is again. Money is not the solution. We're funding plenty now. Now, are there some districts that struggle because of tax base has moved away?
The local portion.
The local portions, there are issues. I acknowledge that. You're going to see in this school reform, in this education reform package, some pointed teacher pay raises and incentives to get teachers to places where there are shortages, and especially in our underperforming districts. That's where we want to direct our, if there are any new resources to that, that's what we want. They're going to be pointed and directed with outcome-driven factors there.
I think that makes sense. So the strategy you mentioned earlier about let's just empower the Department of Education, the Board of Education, and the department and the folks that work there to come up with a plan to achieve this consolidation. How's that received? That seems like a good plan to me, taking politics out of it.
It's been very good conversations. Now, you've got the issue of elected school boards, and the other thing that our MDE leaders want is to be able to, we've got some school boards, this may surprise you a little bit, that maybe don't operate exactly right.
Right.
And there are issues about, who attends the meetings, what are the qualifications, so they wanted to kind of get in the weeds on that. And then now you're getting into a duly elected public official and what right does MDE or even Jason White have to question somebody else who got elected by the same folks that elected me.
Sure.
And so we've got to be careful about that part, and so we're trying to iron that out as they wanted to see. They wanted to have some oversight, if you will, over their school boards. Okay. And so we're trying to there's some subtle political nuances there that we've got to work through as we figure out what that looks like. Rob is our chairman of education in the House, is adamant that we get some reform when it comes to this large number of school districts we have. And again, folks, we're not talking about consolidating schools. We're talking about districts. We're talking about admin. And that's not a shot at our admin. It's just we've got too many. We've got more than most other states who have 5 times the students. We can do better there. That's one more positive step for Mississippi taxpayers. And our kids, we can do better there and direct resources to the classroom where they should go.
And in some cases, as you know, there are more back office administrative resources in a poor performing district than there are in a high performing district.
It is, and if you look at a lot of our public school spending, what you've seen grow more than as a percentage is the admin side of it. And we can argue about the reasons for that. And yes, they disproportionately track to the underperforming much more so than to the high-performing districts.
No doubt. Seems like we ought to overlay the best model and sort of make that a standard.
That's exactly right. And I tell folks one of our best districts in the state is DeSoto County. All of those schools up there, and guess what? They have one school district.
One district.
They have lots of high-performing schools inside of it. They have one superintendent.
And a growing county. I mean, the enrollment continues to grow because folks are moving into the county.
And I think I believe it's, I'm not sure, I think it's Hernando maybe. $90 million brand new high school
Saw
sitting
that.
right there.
$90 million.
Yes.
Saw it. It's beautiful too. So to those who say, wow, all these superintendents across Mississippi and a lot of the related staff just seem to be unnecessary and overpaid. You know, we have a lot of folks that make a lot of money in these positions. That's not actually controlled by the legislature.
That's
right?
not controlled by the legislature. And you won't hear me beating those ladies and gentlemen up over what they make or don't make, because again, I think if we could consolidate that a little bit and then let it be about free market and choice and introduce that into our education system, I think all of that starts taking care of itself.
I do too.
But again, it comes back to the taxpayer and what they're willing to foot the bill for or not. And when you combine that with parent power and parents being in charge of their child's education, I think the best results follow that. We're now surrounded.
Yeah.
We're now surrounded by states that allow it.
We're a big, very obvious white dot sitting right there in the middle of the region, and hopefully we get something done there. But appreciate you coming in. Appreciate the conversation and, of course, your efforts and those of the members of our legislature for all they do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Gerard. Thank you for the opportunity. Always good to be here.
Yes, sir. We're coming right back. Final segment on Middays is next.